is Hưng Trần, but most people here call me Eric. I'm a senior at Carrollwood Day School, and I'm originally from Vietnam, where I lived my first 13 years. Today, I'm about to show you a hidden dimension, a visual way of thinking that's in each of our brains that we never really learned to access. But first, let me start off with a quick mental math performance to show you quite how powerful it can be. In a minute, I'll ask a random audience member for a random 3-digit number. Now what I'll do is I'll add that number to itself over and over again. If you want to, you can pull out your phone and open your calculator app to check my answers. And the way to do this fast, to follow along, would be, for example, if someone chose the number 200, to click 200 plus 200 equals. But then now if you keep clicking equals over and over again, then it'll keep adding 200 to that number. So now I'll ask a random audience member for a 3-digit number. Anyone? Yes? 354. If anyone's trying to get that ready in their calculator, I'll give you guys a second. Okay, 354, 708, 1062, 1416, 1770, 2124, 2478, 2832, 3186, 3540, 3894. Anybody have another number, please? Yes, sir. 743. Give you guys a second. Okay. 743, 1486, 2229, 2972, 3715, 4458, 5201, 5944, so on. So what you guys just saw was a calculation that you could still check on your calculator. Now I want to take it up a notch and show you something that you can't quite follow along on your calculator. Division. It's one of my best calculations. On the screen is 1,000 random division questions. You can scroll to them to see that they are indeed randomly assigned. Each of them have a 4-digit answer. And now I'll ask another random audience member for a number from 1 to 1,000 to choose a question that I will be doing. Anyone? 320. Please pull up question 320. The answer is 8,233. Please reveal the answer. So what you guys just saw was actually a part of what I performed on national television when I was 12 on a show called Super Brain Vietnam, which featured the country's most extraordinary mental feats. Here, I performed calculations such as the addition of 23-digit numbers in half a second per number, divisions like you just saw, and other high-order root calculations. 2 of my performances were televised and amassed over 300 million views across social media. And in one of them, I actually competed against a Japanese girl, Rine Sujikubo, who is widely considered to be one of the best in the world and a former world record holder. I'm not a human calculator. I don't have some rare genetic gift. I can do this because when I was 7, someone taught me to see numbers differently. And today, I want to show you what happens when we unlock that dimension. Because what it enables me to do with numbers is only a tiny fraction of its power. So when I was 7, my parents enrolled me in this program back in Vietnam that taught mental math using an abacus, an ancient calculation tool that represents numbers with beads on rods. I didn't know it then, but they weren't just teaching me math. They were showing me how to see things differently. You see, most of us are taught to process numbers as abstract symbols. Your brain works through the logic step by step. The abacus training teaches you to visualize calculations. After enough practice, the calculations become so instinctive that you're not really thinking anymore. You're just seeing beads move in your head. The calculation shifts towards your visual spatial reasoning and away from your internal verbal narration. After over a decade of the abacus, practices, competitions, TV show performances, I realized something. Our brains have this incredible visual spatial dimension that we never really tap into. But the abacus was just the beginning. It opened a door to something much bigger, a whole new way of thinking that transforms abstract information into something you can see, something you can experience. And once you learn to unlock this dimension of thinking, you might be surprised at what your brain can do. But first, let me start off with the abacus. How does a simple tool with beads on rods completely rewire your brain? Let me show you how it works. On the screen is an abacus. There are multiple types of abacuses, but this one in particular is called the Soroban abacus, created in Japan centuries ago, and is most commonly used amongst the world's best. As you can see, there's a horizontal divider stretching across the whole abacus, dividing each column into 1 bead at the top and 4 beads at the bottom. Each bead at the top represents 5, while each bead at the bottom represents 1. Now, if we look at the column right in the center, indicated by that red dot, that column represents the units. When we move to the left of that column, it's a tens column, then again the hundreds column, thousands, and so on. When we move to the right, we go towards the decimal numbers. At first, it's just beads moving up and down. Simple patterns. But what's so magical about the abacus is that it transforms these abstract numbers into something physical, and the math calculations into simple gestures. And so now, for example, 57 plus 18 isn't a math problem anymore. It's just a gesture on the abacus. After a while, your hand knows the movements. You internalize which operations are corresponded with which gestures. And at first, you practice this on a real physical abacus. But after a lot of practice, for some people this could be months, some people this could take years, something magical happens. Your teacher takes away the abacus, and they tell you, close your eyes, now calculate. And you can still see it. The abacus is still floating behind your eyelids. Your fingers still wave through the empty air, and the beads still move in your mind. When I calculate now, I see a ghost abacus. You might notice my fingers micro-twitching, and each twitch corresponds to a gesture. Each twitch corresponds to numbers shifting in my mental abacus. It's so fast that sometimes I don't consciously process most of it. Scientists have actually studied this with brain imaging. They found that when they studied their brain images of abacus experts, they found that when they calculated, they relied much less on their language regions, and instead, they relied on their visual spatial areas, the same parts that we would normally use to catch a ball or navigate around a building. So math becomes a visual problem instead of a linguistic one. And our visual processing is ancient, fast, and powerful. Let me ask the audience a question. How many of you have learned a second language as a kid? Show of hands. I see quite a few of you have. And the abacus actually works pretty similarly, especially when you learn it young, when your brain is still plastic. It doesn't just add a skill. It completely rewires how you think about numbers. I don't choose to see numbers on an abacus anymore. I just naturally see them that way. Just like how when you're fluent in a language, you just think in it rather than translating it. That's what happened with me and numbers. But if you're sitting here thinking, well, I'm not 7 anymore, don't worry, because there's another powerful visualization technique that you can master at any age. And it's for something we all care about, memory. So the abacus taught me that visualization is powerful, but I didn't realize how far it could go until my time on the TV show. During the long hours backstage, I met a whole community of memory experts. And these weren't just people who were good at memorizing things. They were world record holders and world champions. I witnessed them memorize thousands of digits, random images, and historical facts, things that just didn't seem possible. And so when I talked to them and I asked them how they do it, they pretty much all relied on the same underlying technique, the memory palace method, also known as the method of loci. I'd heard of the method before. I actually used it to memorize 1,000 digits of pi for fun. But seeing all the diverse ways everyone applied this technique and the level at which they performed it showed me that it was much more than a party trick. So there's a story that goes back over 2,000 years to ancient Greece. There's a story about a poet named Simonides at a banquet, when suddenly the roof collapsed. Everyone was killed, crushed beyond recognition, but Simonides could identify where each person had been sitting, because he remembered where each person had been sitting. You can probably walk through your childhood home in your mind right now in detail. Try it. You can still see every room, where each piece of furniture was, maybe even the smaller details scattered around the house. You don't even really have to try hard to remember it. It's just there. And the memory palace takes advantage of this exact thing, our brain's unusually strong spatial memory. And the core concept behind the method is that you can attach information as vivid images onto specific locations in a place that you're familiar with. But let me give you a concrete example of how this would work. Say I need to memorize a shopping list. Say it's milk, bread, chicken and eggs, cheese, apples, rice, butter, oranges, and spaghetti. So how I would do it is I would go to the start of my memory palace, my door. I open my door, and I see a huge carton of milk blocking the door. I push over it. It's cold, spilling everywhere. Now I'm going to my living room. I see my couch is made entirely out of bread. I sit down and sink into it. Now I go to my kitchen. I open my refrigerator, and I see a live chicken inside, laying eggs onto the shelf. On the counter next to it, cheese is melted all over the counter, apples hang from the ceiling fan, rice spilled across the floor, crunching under my feet, butter smeared across the window, oranges filling the sink, and spaghetti hanging out of every drawer. So what I just did was I attached each object along with a vivid image onto a specific location in my memory palace. So now, when you ask me what was in the list, I can just go back in my memory palace and see all the images. And I'd go milk, bread, chicken and eggs, cheese, apples, rice, butter, oranges, spaghetti. I'm not really remembering these words. I'm just retracing a journey through my house. And this is how you may have seen memory champions memorize thousands of digits. They first create their memory palace, often with hundreds, sometimes thousands of specific locations. Then, since numbers aren't exactly vivid images, they have to convert them into images using a fixed number-to-image system. So say every number from 00 to 99 would always correspond to a specific object. And now they can do what we just did and attach those images into specific locations in their memory palace. And the key behind all of this is that the images have to be vivid, weird, and exaggerated, because our brains evolved to remember unusual things, potential threats, surprising events. So for example, when your brain sees a live chicken in your fridge laying eggs onto the shelf, it remembers that. And the thing is, you don't have to be young to learn this. You can start today. In fact, I'll encourage all of you to take the first step right now. Think of a place that you would want to make your memory palace. This could be anywhere that you're very familiar with. Maybe you can see this whole place in your head. Maybe you're here every day. Maybe your home, your workplace, your school. Just think of that place. And now you've taken the first step. Now, not the now, but the next time you're here, just take a few minutes, bring along a notepad or a phone, something to write stuff down in, and just take your normal path, your natural path, walking around this place. And along the way, just pick specific locations in that place to add into your memory palace. And after that, just spend a bit of time internalizing that journey. It doesn't have to be long at first. It can be 5, 10, or 20 locations. It doesn't matter. You'll have a mental stage for anything that you need to remember. And students, you might find that you won't really have to rely on cramming for tests as much anymore. In fact, you might actually find that memorizing math formulas or random historical events could somehow become fun when you turn them into these absurd stories in your memory palace. And for everyone, you won't have to worry about forgetting a loved one's birthday again. You can just take that information into your new mental stage. So why are our brains so good at this? The answer is evolution. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors needed to remember where water was, where the predators hunted, which path led home. Spatial memory is crucial for survival. There's actually an area of our brain called the hippocampus, responsible for exactly this, spatial memory and navigation. All of us have this ability. It's fundamentally human, but most of us never really learn to use it. We try to memorize things through repetition, like our brains are filing cabinets, but that's not how we evolved. We evolved to remember journeys, to navigate, to survive. So when you turn information into a journey through space with vivid images, you're finally using what your brain was made for. So, to recap, numbers can be movements, images, patterns in space. Information can be experienced as a journey. They both revealed something important. Our brains have this incredible visual spatial dimension that's so powerful, but we never really use to its fullest potential. Most education focuses on words, logic, step-by-step thinking, and those are important, but there's this whole other way of processing the world just sitting there, waiting. And I'm not saying to throw away your calculator and use your inner caveman brain, but my one hope for you is that you don't sell yourself short. Don't accept that you're bad at math or you can't memorize things, because each one of your brains has this visual dimension, this spatial dimension, where information is images, math becomes movements, memory becomes a journey. It's always been there. You just have to learn to see it. Thank you.